Alright, so what inspired you to start comics?
I was a geek. Nobody cared about me. All I cared about was comics. It was the only saving point. I don't know. I was shy when I was a kid, so the only thing I knew was this. This is the only, you know. The minute I picked up a comic book years ago, it just, this is what I wanted to do.
Well, I'm sure you found lots of friends through that, though. I mean,
lots of what? I'm sorry?
Lots of friends through that, though, right?
Oh, none of my friends did it. No. Not in junior high school. No. It was just me. There weren't many other people doing what I was doing, except for the professionals. And at the time, there was one professional, Perez, used to live in my neighborhood. And he used to go to the local comic book shop. And I would go talk to him every now and then. But not really. I mean, I went to the high school art and design and got lucky.
But the culture around comic books has changed so much. I mean,
and now it's commonplace, but back then it wasn't.
Yeah.
If you like comic books, nobody cared. They thought you were weird. Even my parents. They didn't even know what to make of it.
Speaking of your old comic books, one that I enjoyed back in the day as a gamer myself was the Captain N comic books. What do you remember about working on those ones in particular?
I only worked on Legend of Zelda. I didn't work on Captain N.
Okay. So tell me about the Legend of Zelda ones.
Well, another thing, when Shooter left to go from Marvel and start Valiant, I had a friend of mine working there. I wasn't getting any work at Marvel at the time. I said, "Come and work for us. Come and meet Jim." So I met Shooter at the time. Shooter liked my work, and he said, "Hey kid, come work for us." And I said, "Okay." And then I started getting work at Marvel again by accident on Toxic Avenger. But at the time, they needed to Valiant needed to publish their stuff, so I ended up working for Marvel again. It was a weird time, but there was like moments where things would just happen, and I just kept at it. I knew this is what I wanted to do.
How was it working with Nintendo back then? Were they as protective of their IP as they are now?
I wouldn't know if they were or not. They probably were. I mean, we didn't get to keep any original art, so I would say yes, maybe.
I'm wondering if you've, since you worked on Toxic Avenger, if you've seen renewed interest in your work on that, given that there's going to be a new film coming out?
A bit. I mean, I know there's a new Toxic Avenger comic book coming out. I've been trying to find out about who had the IP on it, and it turned out Ahoy Comics had it, so maybe I'll talk to them about trying to do something for them, but that's never a guarantee, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. So, I caught you in the middle of doing a painting. Can you maybe walk us through your creative process a little bit?
Well, I'm working off a photograph, and I try to sketch it out as best I can, and then I outline it and then paint it, I mean, it's not, when you're doing something like this, it is what it is. It's you're working off of a photo, so to me, it's a no-brainer. It's when you do something from scratch, like instead of this pose, you do a completely different pose. That a lot of creativity comes into that. You got to really think the piece through. But when you're working on a photograph and just copying it, not to say that there's no talent in it, but it's a pretty straightforward. I always consider like a copy job, but you still got to get the colors right. You can't just, particularly when you're painting something.
That's Chuck Norris you're painting there?
Yeah, I'm doing a Chuck Norris.
Someone commissioned you that to get it signed?
No, I just figured I'd do one, and maybe somebody will walk by and like it and get them, buy it and get them to sign it. I'm just kind of doing it for myself, really, to be honest with you. Sometimes you got to make your own art. Just do it. No excuses. Just produce art.
So what characters have you enjoyed kind of working on the most throughout your career?
Well, you know, I'm a big. I like, you know, I never got to work on Doctor Strange. I love that character. But to me, doing any kind of comic book work is fun. It didn't matter what book it was. I was doing comic books. You know, that's how I always looked at it. You know, it's something that a lot of other people wanted to do, and I was doing it. So there's really no preference, to be honest with you. It's comic books, you know. You either love doing it or you don't. And since I love doing comic books, it didn't matter what book I was on.
It's great that you love your job so much. You know, not everyone's so lucky.
Well, I mean, it's not luck. It's just, how can I explain it? It's just who I am. You know, it's the one thing that just came to me, and it stuck with me, and I've been lucky to get into it. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes any sense. But.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how you handle creative blocks or lack of inspiration?
You gotta. I always tell people to always think the way John Buscema thought of things. John Buscema looked at this as a job, which it is. You know, you have to. I mean, not to say that you won't get creative blocks, but if you approach it with every day, you're going to sit down on the table and you're going to produce art. You know what I mean? Like John Buscema treated it like a job, the way it's supposed to be treated. It's the same way illustrators look at their job. You know, it's a process you have to work through. Doesn't matter if you're having a block or not. You have to work through it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're on a deadline, you gotta get the job done, right?
You gotta get, even if you got a block, take a walk for a little while, come back. But in the end, the job is still gonna get done. If you don't get it done, someone else will. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So you can't, I'm not saying that you can't have a mental block. You can, but you gotta learn to have some kind of balance, you know? This is why John Buscema's approach was brilliant, because he worked from 9 to 5, took his lunch break or whatever, and at the end of the day, it didn't matter where he was on the page, he was done for the day. And then he had the rest of the day to himself. So he didn't bother thinking about it or worrying about it. And then the next day, he would start at 9 o'clock again, like a regular job, and work through the problems. So if he ran across something that he had a problem with, he would work through it until he got it done, you know? I mean, there are different ways to approach this. I mean, if you think about Norman Rockwell probably never took off. He was just obsessed. It's an obsession. It gets stuck in you. You can't, like if you go back further to like the Line Decker brothers or you know, all the fine illustrators, this was their job. You know, there's no, I'm gonna fuck off somewhere and do whatever. It doesn't work that way. You gotta learn to get your stuff done. And if you don't, then it's gonna cause problems, you know? You might not land the jobs because you're not willing to put the proper time in, you know what I mean?
As the camp you're in, have you found the proper work-life balance? The clock strikes 5.
Well, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I'm not. I'm saying that you're gonna struggle doing art, producing art, or creating art, and you just got to learn to work through it. You got to learn to work through it, and the quicker you learn, the better off you're going to be, because you know that involves, you know, if you're having problems with anatomy, you know, well, go practice your anatomy. You know, go work on your anatomy. Don't hope and pray that you're going to get it right. You know what I mean? Take some reference. Take some photos. Take whatever it is that's going to help you get the shot that you need. You know? It's just part of the process. It's unavoidable. You're going to have days where you can't produce the art. That's just a fact. But if you sit down and you work through it, and get used to working through it, you're going to be better off as an artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Totally went over my head. I just noticed that you indeed have a Legend of Zelda hat on right now.
It's funny, it's the hat that I get the most compliments on. I just like the hat.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I did work on the book. I mean, people find it amusing, particularly when I'm walking down the street. Adults who don't understand think, like, look at this adult wearing a... I mean, I don't know if they know what it is they're looking at, but it's still funny to me that, you know, people will be like, oh, well, that's just kids. I'm like, well, guess what? An adult is the one that's sitting down and creating that every day. So they have to be, you know, no one says that about Charles Schultz drawing kids. Do you think anybody walked up to Charles Schultz and was like, wow, that's not an adult thing to do? You know what I mean? What about Calvin and Hobbes? You're going to walk up to Bill Watterson and say, well, time for you to find a real job. You know, this kid stuff ain't real. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it's a mental state. It's because one person who might not understand creativity might think that's for kids. While the artist is thinking, this is my process, this is how I create, this is, you know, my brain works. The artist's brain works on a different, same thing with musicians. They just work on a different, you know, an artist, that people that want to be artists, they know this. You know, they might not get the reinforcement of like, it's okay to be a creative person and to create art, no matter what it is. You know what I mean? Yeah. They go against the norm. You know, it's just, it's, I think being an artist in general is just, it's a lifestyle. You know, you can't, you don't turn it off. It's always there. Even when you're not working, it's always, you notice things. Ah, that'd be good for this. That'll be, you know what I mean? That's the same thing with writers. Anybody that's a creative, it's just always there in your back of your mind. And you're gonna have doubts. You're gonna have days where you can't get it done, or you're struggling, and you know you got to learn to take your breaks and find a way. Just find a way, or you know just turn off your brain for a little bit and go back. And then when you turn it off, more stuff comes to you. You know?
Yeah. We were talking about reference material earlier for Zelda. Was the animated series out at that point? Is that what you were kind of...
No, I think at the time, Shooter got the license for Nintendo. And, you know, that was the best way to launch his company, by doing these comics. But his whole idea was to do his own line of comics. That's where... when he got the license to Rai and a whole bunch of other books, they pivoted from that to Turok and Rai and Magnus and a whole bunch of other new series that they did. It was a starting point. And it was a good starting point because Nintendo wanted to do those, they let them do those books, you know?
Do you have a final question? Do you have a piece of advice for anyone who wants to be an up-and-coming comic artist?
Well, I tell people all the time, now it's a global market, so if you want to do it, it's a 24/7 job. You got to really want to do it. Right now, some kid in Spain, some kid in Italy have seen all the rise of the Spanish artists and the ones from Italy. And they go, I can become a comic book artist now, because all you need is a internet connection, the ability to upload your files. So if you're not hungry enough, you know, it's not going to work for you. It's all consuming. If it's all consuming and you know you can do it, do it. But if it's any point you're having doubts and you're worried about it, yeah, you know, it's not worth it to you. You're going to suffer more than it's worth. It's just the people who make it are people who are just obsessed. You know, they're doing it every day. You know, there's no day, particularly when you're trying to make it, there's no days off. You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, it's like any other business. Any business, you go up to any businessman, the same mental process has got to be applied. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's say I'm starting Apple. How obsessed was Steve Jobs? On a scale of 1 to 10, how obsessed do you think he was?
10.
He was an 11.
Yeah.
So was Wozniak, all those guys. It's the same thing. It's a business, you know. You got to love it. You got to be obsessed with it. And if you feel that way, you definitely should be doing something creative or comic book related. Even put out your own book. Screw it. Why wait for someone to give you the job when you can create your own job? Now there's so many tools like Clip Studio and man, there's so many great programs. You sit and you learn to get better on your own, you know? There's so many online tools that weren't even available back in the day. Now you can go on YouTube and learn about anything. You know, if there's a kid out there that wanted to learn how to draw comic books, all he has to do is go on to YouTube. David Finch is on YouTube, constantly teaching classes. He's got tons of YouTube videos on how to draw, how to do lighting, how to do storytelling, you know? So you got to become just as obsessed as everybody else if you want to do this. Comic books is not to say it's not for the weak, but you got to let it consume you. If you really want to do it, you got to let it consume you. If that makes sense.
Now, where can people find you? Are you on social media?
I'm on Instagram. I'm also on Whatnot. It's a streaming platform where people can purchase commissions from me or bid on to get a commission from me. I'm on Whatnot a lot. I'm on Instagram, but more on Whatnot than Instagram than anything.
What's your handle on there?
Rodney Ramos, comic book artist.
And anything in the comic book shops that we can expect to see from you soon?
Not anytime soon. The last thing I did was for a company that I don't know. They just didn't have the heart to keep doing comics. Let me put it that way. And I haven't been actively looking either. I've just been doing my own thing because it's very competitive. You know, a lot of it has to do with connections.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.